Hey everybody, it is Dean Z speaking to you from the University of Michigan Law School. And today I want to talk about a topic that is sort of related to the addenda topics that I have done recently in the last couple of weeks. And this is a particular subsection of an addendum or not. How's that for clear? Here's what I want to say. There are many people ask us all the time. I'm neuroatypical. I had a mental health crisis. I had, things along these lines. Something that has to do with, your brain at some level that is hard to talk about, but that you feel is relevant to your application. Should you talk about it? If so, how? And if so, what pitfalls are there to avoid? So let's just talk generally. Should you talk about it? The first question is, do you want to talk about it? You should not feel obligated to talk about anything, I guess. But in general, if you have, let's just talk about, let's just use as one example so we can really be kind of concrete here. Let's use the example of a major depressive episode, which happens a lot, and we see lots of people talking about this in the application. So let's say you have a major depressive episode. Should you talk about it? Well, question one is, do you want to, in general? If you're like, I'm comfortable, but I'm not like dying to, then the next question is, why would you? Is there a reason to? So maybe you need to talk about it, or you think you ought to talk about it because you withdrew from school, or there was some period of unemployment in your history that relates to this. In which case, yeah, it would be good to be able to address it. And in that case, you just need to do it in an addendum. And, there's something that you need to explain. There's a mystery that will be in there. And if, you don't explain it, that will be a question mark in the reviewer's head, and it might be a problem. So very brief, to the point, a few sentences would be enough. You do want to always, though, make sure you are saying, for any kind of problem or hurdle that you are drawing a reader's attention to, you want to make the case that, and this is not a problem for me with regard to law school. So if it's, let's say, a major depressive episode, you want to say, here's how I got treated, and now I am not struggling with depression. I have a great medication regimen, and I am sticking to that, and I've had 2 years or 1 year or whatever it is, and everything is going well. That's great. Like, you came out the other side. That is an absolutely appropriate thing to talk about. What if you want to make it the subject of an essay? I feel like that works if there is some law school related reason for doing that. So I would not talk about a struggle with depression in your personal statement as a way of getting to know you sort of generally, unless it is leading to a message of, and this is why I'm interested in law school. And there could be all kinds of reasons why having a major depressive episode and whatever occurred there might make you interested in law school. Maybe it had to do with, maybe you were hospitalized as a part of that against your will, right? And so that's an interesting legal issue. Or maybe you had privacy concerns that came up because of this, and that made you interested in the law, or whatever it is, right? Like, so if there's some message about that that's relevant to this undertaking of applying to law school, by all means, you could do it. But I wouldn't use it just as like a way of getting to know you, because you're looking for something that is going to show you, for your essays as a general proposition, in the light of, and I am going to be a great law school applicant, a great law school student, and a great lawyer. And having, a struggle either with mental health or physical health or any kind of health struggle isn't necessarily, going to illustrate that for for the person watching. So you should only do it if it is leading to some positive story. So if it's an explanation for something or if it's a positive story, that is when you should be talking about it. And then how do you talk about it? You should be as direct as possible. Like if you are not comfortable talking about it, it is not going to be a good essay, right? That's just it. So I often see essays where people will talk in very sort of vague terms about a health problem. Then that's why they had, whatever, a series of W's or something like that, right? And it's not that I hold that against them, but it awakens a question in my mind, like, well, what kind of health problem? Why are you bringing this up and not explaining it thoroughly? I think you are better off, if you don't want to explain something thoroughly, I think you are better off not trying to explain it. And I know I always say you need to think about what's going to be a mystery and explain the mystery, but if I understand why someone might not want to get into the personal nitty-gritty of whatever struggles they've had, but in that case, don't open the door halfway, right? Just move on and see how that goes. So if you're going to address it, be straightforward, say the diagnosis. I don't think you have any need to get into details about what you went through, unless that's relevant for some reason. But saying the name of the diagnosis and like how it's being treated, that's very helpful. This is advice, I wanted to hinge it on the, something concrete, but this is advice that pertains not just to mental health issues, but also physical health issues, same idea, or a neuroatypicality, right? So so that same framework of, do you want to talk about it? How do you talk about it? Can you be direct about it? Is it relevant? These are the things you need to be thinking about. I know it's tough stuff, and this in particular, this is true for all the advice I give. There's a lot of nuance to it, and there will be specifics for a given individual that I'm not going to be addressing here. Not going to be able to do that. But I hope this sort of general framework is helpful. Bottom line, the fact that you've had some kind of struggle is not a thing that is going to get held against you in the admissions process, so long as you are also, have an application that is demonstrating, now I'm ready. I'm going to be able to do law school. And in this struggle that I have or had, depending on if it's already resolved, that's not going to be holding me back. You should be confident that people are prepared to believe that and are happy to hear your story, but you have to, as I say, be direct. And if you don't feel like you're able to be direct, then I would certainly pick another topic for the essay, and I would think carefully about whether it is worth an addendum of trying to explain things if you can't go into detail. I hope that's helpful. I know this is a tricky topic. Let us know what questions I have not answered here. Give us comments or send us emails. Love to hear it. Now, let's turn to grammar. Here's one that I see all the time coming up that I actually think has gotten worse because of computers. And that is when to say IT' and when to say ITS. It's and its. If the sentence isn't "it is," you don't have an apostrophe. If it's possessive, if you're saying "it's" as a possessive, there's no apostrophe. So it's a weird rule. We always use apostrophes to show possession, except here. So if you're reading it, and IT' is auto-corrected in your text or your document, and you're proofreading it, and you can't substitute "it is" for the IT', then it shouldn't have an apostrophe. I will say as an aside here that's a contraction. The "it is" to "its" is a contraction. And those are generally fine to have, certainly in an email, totally fine. And I think they're totally fine in essays for the most part, too. They are slightly less formal than saying "it is." But I think, it's only slightly less formal, and I think in 2025, it's perfectly appropriate to be using a contraction. But think about how it fits in with the rest of your writing. So if you have something that's very formal, maybe that's jarring, and maybe you just want to say it is instead of a contraction. But I have to say, it comes up all the time because of autocorrect, and it's such a common mistake that it should now be considered a non-mistake in some ways. But for some reason, it always jumps out, and I think you can have this beautiful piece of writing, and you've gotten that boo-boo in there, and suddenly it's like 50% of your wisdom has been subtracted because of your mistake. So it's one to watch out for. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you as always for watching. Thank you to Dustin for all your help. Send us emails to law.jd.admissions@umich.edu and put vlog in the subject line, or put comments below. We love to hear from you. And wherever you go, go blue.